is Yasmin Javed. I'm the mother of Fawziyah Javed. You may have seen me on the documentary, The Push. For people that have watched the documentary, I want to give them more of an insight as to how the Anwars were behaving at the time and how they're still behaving. A lot of people are asking me questions about their behaviour, and I want to be able to answer some of them questions.
Can you tell us about Fawziyah's possessions? What specific items are you hoping to receive back?
Well, there's items, Fawziyah's, that hold great sentimental value. You know, her life's been taken, so their possessions, have them back. They just hold so much sentimental value to us. I mean, like there's some of her perfumes. Obviously that's Fawziyah's smell. A lot of her possessions we haven't got back.
Why is getting Fawziyah's possessions important to you?
Well, as well as some of them holding great sentimental value, there's a lot of very valuable possessions of Fawziyah's which I would like to sell and give the proceeds to charity. A lot of the charities that Fawziyah supported, it would be great to give them that money.
How did you hope the Anwars would respond to the request for Fawziyah's possessions?
I would have hoped that they would have done the right and decent thing and given Fawziyah's possessions back, which are rightfully her family's, that I shouldn't even have to ask for them. They should have just done it automatically. Given this is such a difficult situation, I would have hoped that they wouldn't have wanted to add to our pain and grief, but obviously that's not the case. I think anybody else who had an ounce of decency in them, you wouldn't even have to ask. They would do it automatically because it's the right thing to do. Knowing that this family is deep in pain and grief, let's do the right thing.
How have the Anwars actually responded to the request for Fawziyah's possessions?
Well, in this process we've had lots of people involved. We've had the police involved, we've had a family friend involved, we've had 2 law firms involved, and what they've done is they've ignored requests and just given us piecemeal of Fawziyah's possessions back. And 3 years later, we still haven't received all of Fawziyah's possessions back. There are 3 things that they've told us throughout the process of trying to get Fawziyah's possessions back. They've told us Fawziyah took absolutely everything when she went for that 4-day break in Edinburgh, which is impossible. You're going for a 4-day break to Scotland. Why would you take absolutely everything? Then they've told us that when Police Scotland came round to the house to search the house, they took absolutely everything, and that's not true. Police Scotland have actually verified that they only took basic things like mobile phones, Fawziyah's laptop and paperwork, and they actually gave the father receipts for this. Then they've told us we don't know where any of Fawziyah's possessions are. Our son's going to come out soon and he'll be able to give you Fawziyah's possessions back. I mean, it's 3 years on now, the trial has been concluded and we still haven't had all of Fawziyah's possessions back. As I've just discussed, we've heard lots of contradictions about what has happened to Fawziyah's possessions by the murderer's parents. All we want is Fawziyah's possessions back for the reasons I've outlined, because they rightfully belong to myself as Fawziyah's mother, as Fawziyah's next of kin. The only reason that I can think of as to why he's still holding on to Fawziyah's possessions is that they're cruel. They're continuing that coercive control and abuse, and it's their greed. When the first law firm we used to try and get Fawziyah's possessions back sent a list of the items that belonged to Fawziyah to the father and the mother, the father contacted a friend of ours and was very, very dismissive and came across as though he didn't care why we wanted the items back. I felt that his response was very cold and very uncaring, and he made a mockery as to why we wanted some of the possessions back. Giving you an example, he said to the family friend, "Why do they want half-empty perfume bottle back?" And he said mockingly, "Why do they want the Quran back? Or his prayer mat back?" His behaviour was appalling.
How has not receiving the possessions 3 years later made you feel?
It's added to my pain and grief. I feel that they've showed no remorse, no humanity, not a grain of decency. Their behaviour's been appalling, they've been heartless, and every day for me is an uphill struggle and a battle to get through, and they've added to my immense pain and grief.
Can you tell us about how the Anwars treated Fawziyah?
I wouldn't even treat an animal the way they treated Fawziyah. They promised to look after Fawziyah like one of their own, and they degraded her, they abused her, they treated her in the most appalling way. Fawziyah would often tell me that the mother would often talk about the diamond ring, as was mentioned in the documentary, and would throw it into Fawziyah's face so many times and tell her that they'd bought her a diamond ring and basically make out, "We can treat you like what we want, we've bought you a diamond ring."
Can you tell us a bit about the Anwars' initial reaction to Fawziyah's death and their behaviour during the trial?
Yeah, their reaction to Fawziyah's death was very matter of fact, very cold, and it wasn't a normal reaction to somebody you claim is your daughter. They just were not bothered, they didn't care. I felt that they lacked empathy and their behaviour was absolutely appalling. During the trial, I felt their behaviour was absolutely disgusting. The way that they were blowing kisses at their son, waving at him, thumbs up at him, as if to say, "We're so proud of you, son, you're up for murder an innocent young girl and her unborn baby." In the documentary, you hear the father talking about the diamond ring. Why would anybody have that in their mind? Somebody's lost their only child in a horrific, brutal way, and her unborn baby. That's the last thing that you should have on your mind. Despite the conviction and the overwhelming evidence against the son, they're still going round saying that Fawziyah slipped and fell, and it's nothing to do with their son, that he was innocent.
In the documentary, we see that the murderer made a 1-minute phone call to his father. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, he initially rang up my husband, Fawziyah's father, and as you see in the documentary, when he realised that he'd rang Fawziyah's father by mistake, he hung up and then rang his own father up. They had a 1-minute telephone conversation, but I don't know what that conversation was about. What's the first thing that you would do if your wife fell off a cliff? You'd dial 999 and get an ambulance to her immediately. I think it's very telling that he did not contact the emergency services and he had a 1-minute telephone conversation with his father after pushing Fawziyah. It's like an eternity, a 1 minute telephone conversation under these circumstances. Neither of them contacted emergency services, the father or the son. They delayed in getting medical help for Fawziyah. He lied about having a phone, but later on when he was searched by the police, Fawziyah's phone was found on him, and the phone was working, it had full battery, and he just rang his father up and had that 1 minute telephone conversation, but no attempt to contact the emergency services by either of them. Neither of them contacted us, the son or the father, and we found out 8 hours later on when the police came knocking on my door at 5 in the morning. No attempt was made to contact us, but yet he had contacted his father to tell him whatever he told him, to then continue the pain of not handing over all of those possessions is excruciatingly painful.
Could you remind us what happened to his phone?
Yeah, he dropped it at York train station. Rosie told me that he actually contacted the Lost Property Department at York train station, and later on I found out from the police that his father had gone to pick up his phone from Lost Property at York train station. Police Scotland informed me that they went to pick up the murderer's phone from Lost Property at York train station, and when they actually got there, Lost Property told them the phone had already been picked up. They were shown CCTV camera footage of 2 men picking up the phone, and one of the men was the murderer's father. The police then disclosed to me that they went to the father's house to get the murderer's phone. The father claimed that he didn't have his phone. He was then threatened that he would be arrested, taken to Edinburgh police station and charged with perverting the course of justice. So then he reluctantly went to his car and handed over the murderer's telephone to the police. In the documentary, we saw what Fawziyah was going through. Before the trip to Edinburgh, there was a live coercive control investigation by the police. Fawziyah was going through all this in that house where they were all living together. The police came out twice before the trip to Edinburgh, and the second time was 3 days before they went to Edinburgh. What's really disappointing is that the police didn't pick up on multiple perpetrators and witnesses that saw what was happening. What this meant for the murder trial was that there were additional people, in my view, that were not in the dock, and that there are people that haven't been held to account for enabling the abuse. Silence is complicity, but even further, I know what Fawziyah told me about their behaviour and what I witnessed. It was more than that. And I think the 1 minute phone call speaks volumes to that. We're actually dealing with the consequences now. He may have got a prison sentence, but we've got the life sentence of pain and grief. That will be there till the end of our lives. And it's a slap in the face that they're walking free.
What would you like people watching this video to do or understand after hearing about this?
Well, so many people have reached out to me after Fawziyah was brutally murdered, and they've reached out to me after the documentary, and I just want people to know the truth and to be able to answer some of the questions that they're asking.
How do you see the path forward if Fawziyah's possessions are not returned?
Well, I've exhausted all avenues, and I'm really exhausted with it all, to be quite honest. I just want to put it to bed.